right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to MCJ Report number 185. I hope that no matter where you are or what you're doing, that you are having a lovely evening and you have made the most out of this week, and hopefully you have a great weekend in store. Now, I can see a bunch of you tuning in right now. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to the broadcast. It is Thursday night, 8 p.m., which means that it is MCJ Report night. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Every single Thursday night, 8 p.m., we go live for our 1 hour show. And of course, here on MCJ Report, we are independent media. And as I like to say, we do indeed tell the other side of the story, otherwise left untold by the mainstream media, who have unfortunately, for far too long, completely neglected to do their job. Now, we are live across all platforms, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. Now, unfortunately, on Facebook, there seems to be some shadow banning in place. So if you're watching on Facebook especially, go out and share the broadcast, folks. Share the broadcast. If you're here for the first time, click the like button. Or if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Hit that share button. Share it out to the groups. Let's get a bit of a crowd underway, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? And if you're on Rumble, well, I have to say, Rumble has proven to be my favorite platform for live streaming. That's right, the technology has improved in leaps and bounds. I know that the executive team from Rumble, they've actually poured tremendous resources into improving the platform. So moving forward, I might actually only do the live show on Rumble. What do you guys think about that? So possibly just on Rumble and then uploading the individual segments across other platforms. Just a bit of food for thought there, ladies and gentlemen, thinking out loud. So I can see a good crowd there on Rumble. There's Marianne, there's Willow, Awa. It's great to have you guys on board. Go ahead and put in the chat where you are tuned in from. I love interacting with my very lovely MCJ audience, no matter where you are or where you're tuned in from. So go ahead and share the broadcast. Get the word out there, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, you are watching MCJ Report, and I'm your host, Morgan C. Jonas. And without further ado, let's get this show on the road, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? I'm just going to remove something here so we can, there we go. Alrighty, so let's start off with some news articles. But before I do, that's right, I nearly forgot what is in store for this evening. So on the agenda tonight, we've got a few different topics. The main three are, and there'll be a few other bits and pieces that we talk about, of course, is Daniel Andrews' failed mental health plan that is costing Victorians nearly $1 billion. We're going to have a bit of a chat about that. Also, these drag shows in front of kids, whether it's story time or some sort of performance, they need to end. They must end. And I'm going to talk about exactly why that is, mostly in relation to the fact that anybody that behaves in a sexual way in front of children is, of course, committing an offense, and no child should be exposed to that. We really, really need to knuckle down on this, ladies and gentlemen, because kids are out there effectively being abused, and these people have a free pass. We need to really rein them in, obviously. Also, tonight on the show, we are very happy to be joined by Jammal from Turning Point Australia, who has been engaged in tremendous work, providing lots of resources for the New South Wales voting public leading up to the New South Wales state election. So very, very happy to have Joel on the show. He'll be up around the midway point of the night. So anyway, let's get this started, shall we? Just going to make sure we're all connected. I can see Rumble is connected, Facebook and YouTube also connected. Great stuff, guys. Alrighty, now let's go through some headlines and then we'll get stuck into our feature stories for the evening. Hold on a second. Sound's not working. Just give me 1 second. All right, I think the sound's working now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As you can imagine, the many struggles we face here on MCJ Report, your host Morgan, not just doing the researching and presenting, but also I'm the tech guy, the production guy, the sound guy, the lighting guy, and the fill-in-the-blank guy. So there you go. We're back on track, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so first headline for the evening. What do we have here from the Sydney Morning Herald? Ardern may need ongoing security as true extent of threats is revealed. Yeah, well, I don't think anyone is particularly surprised by this, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? Jacinda Ardern, just an atrocious track record of what can only be described as human rights abuses. Of course, she is most definitely at the extreme left side of politics. Lots of people suffered under her, particularly during the lockdowns, but she's just an example of a typical politician that was seeking more and more power. In fact, she was actually on record proclaiming that the New Zealand government should be the only, quote, source of truth for the New Zealand people. Very, very divisive, and she upset a lot of people. So I think the moral of the story is, if a politician wants to leave office and live a relatively normal life, then don't do the wrong thing by the people. Be fair, don't steal people's freedoms, don't be divisive, and then maybe in such an instance like that, you won't need security. So, well, I think this is just an example of you reap what you sow. Of course, I'm not here encouraging anybody to do anything bad or to be violent towards the ex-Prime Minister. I think she's probably committed some crimes, but I would very much prefer to see her put on trial and be held accountable for those crimes. But this is just simply a matter of cause and effect, ladies and gentlemen. If somebody's in office, they do the wrong thing by the people, then they're probably not going to be safe when they leave office. And it makes you wonder. I wonder what's going to happen to Dan Andrews when he leaves office. I doubt the man will ever be able to show his face in public again. And wouldn't that be nice? Alrighty, we've bet everything on subs that may be obsolete by the time they arrive. So the big ordeal with the submarines, ladies and gentlemen, reading some reports here, and it appears that technology for detecting these submarines is improving in leaps and bounds, and by the time these subs arrive, they very well could be obsolete. So what do you think this says, ladies and gentlemen? Now, this is indeed an opinion piece. This is not gospel, I suppose. But I think what this really outlines is what is so common in governments, both state, territory, and federal, and that is that the government, more than often, they really just want to be perceived to be doing something. So in this instance, we're looking at the military pact, the new alliance between the UK, United States, and Australia. And of course, we've seen Anthony Albanese rubbing shoulders with Joe Biden over in the USA. Of course, Anthony thinking that he's very important, but really his objective is optics. That's right. So Anthony Albanese would prefer to create the impression that he is, quote, doing something to safeguard Australia's national security rather than actually taking legitimate objective measures to safeguard Australia's national security. Unfortunately for these guys, it's all about optics. They don't want to be seen to be sitting on their hands by the public. They want the public to look at them, and in the case of Anthony Albanese, to say something to the effect of, well, look at this guy. He's a go-getter. He's creating this alliance. He's getting the subs in. He is standing up for Australian national security, but actually it's probably the complete opposite of that. Anthony Albanese simply just wants the perception of standing up for, say, Australian national security because he wants to secure votes when it comes to re-election. And that's really what motivates the very vast majority of these people in office. What do they need to do to create the right type of perception that will lead to them getting votes in the next election? And of course, there's a few exceptions to the rules. There's people that take a lot of risks standing up for the people, such as Alex Antic, Gerard Rennick, but they are few and far between, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. Alrighty, moving along here. The flu nearly disappeared during the pandemic. Right, disappeared. Who here remembers the stats, the reports published by the Australian Bureau of Statistics? The year that COVID-19 came into our lives, 2020, the flu was killed off. That's right, the flu disappeared, and no one could really provide any comprehensive information as to why that was. Of course, we saw the ABS published thousands upon thousands of COVID cases, but flu cases just seem to run for the hills. It's almost as if when COVID came into town, the flu said, no, I don't want anything to do with that. I'm getting out of here. But apparently the flu has made a significant comeback, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. The flu was down and out, but now apparently, well, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, is back in full force, bigger and stronger than what it ever once was. So what do you think this is all about, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think is going on with the data? Do you think there's more tests being conducted, or do you think that there's a possibility that maybe, just maybe, Australians' immune systems on average are not quite as strong as what they used to be? And if they're not, then why not? Is it possible that Australians have done something over the past couple of years that could potentially have impacted the natural functioning of their immune systems and has potentially weakened their immune systems by, I'm trying to figure it out. What is something that most people, probably did that could have impacted their capability to develop natural immunity and to, say, fight off the common cold and flu and viruses and things like that. Look, I'm sitting here scratching my head, not too sure. So let's just move on to the next segment. And yeah, we're ready for the first feature segment for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, let me just make sure we're connected. All right, Rumble is going really good. I see Facebook and YouTube. Once again, if you tuned in for the first time, you're watching MCJ Report. I'm your host, Morgan C. Jonas. Give this broadcast a like, give it a share, like this page, subscribe on YouTube, and get the word out there to your friends and family. Alrighty, so what do we have? What do we have first up, ladies and gentlemen? All right, mental health in Victoria, what the government is not saying. Alrighty, so folks, around 2 years ago, Daniel Andrews announced a whopping $870 million spend in order to supposedly fix the mental health crisis in Victoria. There were a few comments made by the Premier back at that time. I'm going to show it to you. Take a look.
The budget to be delivered in just a couple of weeks' time will include almost $870 million in new funding for more beds. So $870 million in new money for more beds, better treatment, better care, making sure that everyone across the community who has a mental illness can get the care that they need when they need it. This is important at a very personal level, but it's also something that we all benefit from in terms of productivity, efficiency, all of those things. But ultimately it's about...
Now that man right there, ladies and gentlemen, he is absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, textbook narcissist. No doubt whatsoever, sociopath on steroids. This man, without question, has contributed to the large-scale suffering of millions of Victorians, even well before COVID in many different instances. One example I can give you off the top of my head was in relation to the rescinding of taxi licenses. That's right, when Uber was able to just be shuffled in by the government, lots of lives destroyed in that instance and even suicides. So the absolute backbone on this man to stand up there and to play the role of Mr. Compassionate. That's right, the government is here. We're going to provide you with beds. We're going to provide you with care. We're going to send mental health experts into schools. And by the way, I would never trust the government to choose any, quote, expert to be going into schools. Of course, we know in Victoria, we've got the mature minor program, the doctors in schools, and it's just an absolute complete mess. So what we see here is a very, very typical tactic used by politicians all over the world. They'll participate in creating a huge problem in society, and then they will step forward and present themselves as the solution to a big problem that has manifested. But one thing they'll never do is claim any responsibility for the role they played in the bringing about of a crisis. And in this instance, we are indeed talking about a mental health crisis. Also, around 2 years ago, the government announced a royal commission into mental health here in Victoria, which I say was completely bogus and yet again another tremendous waste of taxpayer dollars. So let's take a little bit of a look here, ladies and gentlemen. So this is why I'm talking about this topic. I saw this tweet from Dan Andrews just the other day. He said here, quote, exactly 2 years ago, we were handed one of the most important to-do lists our government will ever receive, a royal commission into how to fix our broken mental health system. So he went on to detail the aspects of this royal commission in order to portray to the public that the Victorian state government really cares, that they're doing everything in their capability in order to fix the mental health crisis in Victoria. So this is what the government says they've been doing. It says here, quote, biggest single investment in mental health. You know what that sounds like to me? Lots of consultants, lots of money going to the private sector. Perhaps there was a conflict of interest in some of these deals. How much are these companies being paid? I mean, we don't know. We just have to take the government's word that they've spent our money in a responsible manner. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Goes on to say here, put mental health workers in every secondary school. I say that has big problems written all over it. Rolled out the mental health menu to 683 regional schools. hired 2,500 more mental health workers, opened 6 new local mental health services, and 9 more will open this year. Building 260 new mental health beds, opened 3 infant, child, and family health hubs with kids with behavioural and emotional challenges. Tell you what, how about the government just stays out of the lives of our children? I think that will improve the mental health of kids more than any of this stuff. And finally, opened 21, quote, hope services to help Victorians to recover after they experience a crisis and prevent suicide. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's what the government claims to be up to. But of course, all of this comes at a massive, massive cost to taxpayers. And here in Victoria, we're already the most taxed state in the country, and the cost of living is through the roof, and we just can't handle these types of expenses. Now, the biggest exception I take to this Royal Commission and these proposed solutions by the government is that at absolute best, they treat the symptoms, but they do not tackle the underlying reasons as to why we are in a mental health crisis, ladies and gentlemen. So what do you think those reasons are? What do you think those reasons are? So let me just go to the next page here. I think that we all have a very, very good understanding of what those reasons are. Of course, when we look over the past few years, we know without any doubt whatsoever that the measures undertaken by the government in terms of the COVID-19 response has resulted in a catastrophe when it comes to mental health. So therefore, the Royal Commission itself is actually bogus and simply a waste of money. If we're not going to get to the underlying cause of why mental illness is out there, then I say that it's not even worth addressing in the first place. So here's some overall problems I see with it. All right, as I said, number one, the measures undertaken by the government are designed to treat the symptoms, not eliminate the cause, right? Because the government is the cause. 2, Royal Commission terms of reference can be constrained for the purpose of crafting a specific narrative. So the one thing you need to keep in mind about Royal Commissions is that the terms of reference are set up by the government. So the government can specifically leave out certain terms of reference that would be inconvenient to their narrative. Okay, so in this instance, if it was within the terms of reference to investigate the government's response to COVID-19 or public policy, then the outcome of the Royal Commission would have been very different, and the public would have lost a tremendous amount of confidence in the Daniel Andrews Labor government, and that's of course why that particular term was never included in the terms of reference. So really what we need is something more to the effect of a Senate inquiry headed up by somebody honourable such as Senator Gerard Rennick, because this Royal Commission is just a circus and is not attacking the underlying issues. All right, number 3, the government neglected to investigate themselves in regard to how public policy has affected mental health. So yeah, basically, ladies and gentlemen, what we see here is the government creating the problems and seeking to create the perception that they are indeed doing something about it by spending $170 million on these services. God knows who the service providers are and which companies are ending up with massive contracts or how much the consultants are being paid. The Royal Commission, just again for optics, we know there's a mental health crisis. We're not interested in ongoing increases to our budget. What we're interested in is solving the problem that causes these mental health problems in the first place. And the only way to solve that problem is for Victorians to wake up and to realise that this government is not fit for purpose, to gather, to organise, and to take effective measures to replacing this government. I know it's not going to happen today, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but we must keep our eyes on the prize. We must think years in advance. Rome was not built in a day. So let this be a reminder to all Victorians that if we want to mend our state, it begins with replacing the government at all costs. Alrighty, let's keep it rolling here, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Alright, drag shows in front of kids is sexual abuse and must end. Who here agrees with that statement? Now, I'm sure that many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. What we have seen popularized over the past few years specifically is the proliferation of these, quote, drag queen story hours for children, but we've also seen them advance to a new level whereby drag queens are performing what can only be described as sexual performances in front of kids. Now, So many people around the world are, of course, outraged, and there's been protests all over the world. But nonetheless, these types of practices are being carried out right now all throughout the Western world. It absolutely boggles the mind that such predatory behaviors have become socially acceptable in the minds of many parents. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a clip here to show you a few examples, but before I play it, I must warn you that viewer discretion is advised. Okay, the footage is graphic, it is traumatic, but this is what is going on all over the Western world, including right here in Australia. Take a look. Absolutely horrific stuff, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? So what exactly are we looking at there? Well, you can call it grooming. You could really call it a lot of things. Now, these adults, these men who are performing these acts in front of children, let me just say that my very, very strong opinion is that not only are these people pedophiles, they are criminals. You need to remember that it is indeed a criminal act for a person to, in an indecent manner, expose themselves to children, especially in a sexual way. So why is it, how is it that we have come to a point in society where not only are these practices going on, they're being encouraged at an institutional government level? Let's have a bit of a talk about some of the definitions in order to understand a little bit more in relation to what we just looked at, okay? Because my very, very firm opinion is that these are criminal offenses. The people who conduct these performances, I would put them in the category of pedophiles, because you need to remember that when it comes to pedophilia, it's not necessarily about a physical act, it's about an intention or a desire that an adult may have to act in a sexual way in front of a minor. Okay, so it's not exclusive to an act in terms of a physical act. It could be a non-physical act as well. And I think we just need to call it out for what it is. All right, so let's have a bit of a look here at the Victorian Crimes Act of 1958. This is section 49F. It says here, sexual activity in the presence of a child under the age of 16. A person A commits an offence if A, as in person A, intentionally engages in an activity and the activity is sexual, and another person B is present when A engages in the activity, and A knows that B is or probably is present when A engages in the activity. All right, so these drag performances, absolutely, you can argue, is a form of a sexual activity with full knowledge that minors are watching. All right, so I say it meets the description of this crime right here. So I'm just going to keep on reading here. It says here, if the child is under the age of 16, I mean, I think that should be extended to 18. It goes on to say, engaging in the activity of presence of person B is contrary to community standards and acceptable conduct. Well, I think that if we conducted a survey of Australians let alone Victorians, they would overwhelmingly agree that these drag performances in front of children do not meet community standards of what is considered acceptable conduct. I would say it's only a bizarre and twisted and perverse cohort of parents out there who seem to think that it's a good idea to take their little children to see these performances. I mean, what goes through the minds of these parents? They just wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm going to get my 5-year-old kid and take my kid to see some explicit drag performance because apparently that's good. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, young kids in China, they're learning how to assemble Glocks. And in the Western world, you've got parents taking their kids to see these types of shows. You know, if we continue on this trajectory, we're going to get eaten alive. And all of our adversaries, they won't have to fire a bullet. The West is going to destroy itself from the inside out unless we, the people, take a stand against this absolute garbage, this institutionalized abuse. All right, goes on to say here, a person who commits an offense against subsection 1 is liable to level 5 imprisonment, 10 years maximum. All right, so in my opinion, these so-called performers, these predators, they don't belong in front of children. They belong in jail. I'm just going to keep reading along here. All right, so what we've got here is from the Australian Government Guides to Social Policy Law National Readiness Guide. Sexual abuse, definition. Sexual abuse of a child is when someone involves a person under the age of 18 in sexual activities they do not understand or that are against accepted community standards. All right, again, this is in regards to activity. So an activity may not necessarily be some sort of physical interaction. It could be indecent exposure, and that's exactly what we're seeing. These people are blatantly breaking our laws, and they're being encouraged to do so, but not just any laws, crimes against the most vulnerable people in our society, children. All right, so it goes on to say that child sexual abuse may include, but is not limited to, preparing or encouraging a child to engage in sexual activity. That's what I say those performances are. It's grooming. It's trying to insert certain depraved notions into the minds of young, malleable children, and it's disgusting, it's predatory, and the fact that we allow this sort of thing to go on in our country is absolutely disgusting. It makes me so horribly ashamed of our government to turn a blind eye. So, you know, shame on the Labor Party and shame on anyone in the Liberal Party who has turned a blind eye and who is not calling this out. You know, there's a lot of people in the Liberal Party that call themselves Christians, yeah? And they completely ignore this sort of stuff because they don't want to rock the boat. Maybe they're happy being in opposition. Maybe they like receiving their easy $200,000 a year. Just sit in your chair, shut your mouth, don't stand up for anything, don't stand up for the kids, and maybe you'll be re-elected. I tell you what, there's too many politicians in our country that are completely spineless to the extent where they would rather keep their seat than speak up and fight for the most vulnerable people in our country, which of course are kids. Alrighty, so I made a comment before where I said these people are pedophiles, and I believe they are because, listen, here's the truth, right? Any adult that thinks about, that seeks to, takes measures to, or engages in some type of sexual performance in front of children, that person, by definition, is a pedophile. Okay, pedophilia does not necessarily refer to a physical act. It could be a non-physical act. It's all about the mindset that these depraved people have. Okay, they're not normal. They have a predisposition. They're attracted to people under the age of 18. It is an absolute disgusting sickness that never ever should be normalized the way that it has been here in the Western world for far too long. Here's a definition here from the Cambridge Dictionary. It says here, quote, pedophilia, the condition of being sexually interested in children or sexual activity with children. Okay, so it's not a physical act that constitutes what a pedophile is. All right, moving along here, we see that in America, a US state, referring to the state of Tennessee, outlawed public drag shows, now a push for bans across America. That's right. So we have one Republican state after another trying to ban public drag shows. But that's not really enough, is it, ladies and gentlemen? I say yes, ban the public drag shows, but ban these shows in front of children under any circumstances. Doesn't matter if it's in a private venue. I mean, a private venue does not give the right to anyone to sexually exploit children. It's as simple as that. A crime against a child is a crime against a child, whether it's done in public or done in private. Now, we see when we have a look throughout the internet that there has indeed been people in these positions, and they've hid behind the cloak of equality, and they've stood in front of the rainbow flag and said we're all about equality. But there's been several individuals, right, these so-called drag queens, that have actually been charged with sexual assault. All you need to do is do a bit of Googling. I'll just give you a couple examples here. Drag queen storytime reader once charged with child sexual assault. So this guy was let in there to perform in front of kids, and he'd actually been charged for that crime in the past. Here's another one right here. Central Pennsylvania drag performer charged with 25 counts of child pornography. In the UK, another one, drag queen charged on 3 counts of related to child sexual abuse materials. Now, let me just say something before I go any further. Listen, if you're a grown adult and you're a drag queen and you want to do performances in front of other adults, you go ahead and do it. I don't care what 2 consenting adults do behind closed doors. I don't want to look at that stuff, but if you want to do it behind closed doors, then you just go ahead and do it. But leave the kids alone, you sick bastards. Leave the kids alone. It's not going to end well for any of these child groomers out there that think all of a sudden that society is changing and they can carry out their sick, twisted, and demented fantasies. I'm telling you, it's not going to go down well. It's not going to go down well. The people will rise up and put an end to it. I am so confident in that. And we look across the pond to the state of Florida and we get some hope from the great governor, Ron DeSantis. Says here, quote, DeSantis weighs ordering Child Protective Services to investigate parents who take kids to drag shows. Absolutely. Absolutely. What parent in their right mind would voluntarily expose their children to this type of depravity, ladies and gentlemen? The Western world is in the gutter. Let me tell you something. They're not doing this in Russia. They're not doing it in Ukraine, right? They're not doing it in Serbia. They're not doing it in the Czech Republic. They're not doing it in China. They're not doing it in Singapore. Where are these so-called drag performances in front of children taking place? It's exclusively the Western world. You look at Germany, countries west of Germany, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States. These Western countries are destroying themselves from the inside out, and unless there is a major correction in this disastrous course, then our countries will absolutely crumble to the ground. Remember, the future leaders of our country are our children. We have an obligation to protect our children, to shield them from groomers, to shield them from the worst people in our society, which are, of course, pedophiles. So let me say it again, that any adult that performs these types of routines in front of children, any adult that seeks to perform a sexual act, or who thinks about it, or who does it, that person is a pedophile. That person is a criminal. We need to call it out and use these definitive terms and not simply turn the other cheek. So to all you liberal politicians out there that claim to be Christian and claim to be conservative, honestly, I don't think that you are either of those two things if you continue to sit there in silence whilst this type of grooming, this exploitation, these criminal acts against children are getting carried out. And to all you parents out there who think that it's a good idea to expose your children to this grooming, you have been sold a bill of lies, an absolute bill of lies. Is this some type of competition to see who is the most progressive person living down your street? Is that what it is? Is this keeping up with the Joneses? Oh, well, what did you do on the weekend? I took my kid to see a drag queen story time. Oh, yeah, well, my kid's transitioning next week. Is this some sort of sick competition for you people? Honestly, having a child is a sacred thing, and every child deserves to be protected. And I'll keep beating this drum, ladies and gentlemen. And also, I want to call on people from the Pride movement. That's right. So if you're a Pride activist, if you're a LGBT activist, speak up. Do you really want this to be a stain on your movement? Do you really want to be providing cover for pedophiles under the rainbow? Or do you want to separate yourself from it? The time to stand up is now and to call this out for what it is. No one cares what two consenting adults do behind closed doors as long as no one's getting hurt. We're not saying anything about that, but leave the kids alone. It's not going to end well for you if you keep doing what you're doing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was quite heavy. But moving on to our next part of the show, I am so very happy and proud to have Joel Jammal as our guest. That's right. Now, Joel is the host of Turning Point Australia. That's right, and has been engaged in phenomenal work. That's right, phenomenal work leading up to the New South Wales state election. Turning Point Australia has published numerous resources online that are designed to help the New South Wales voting public in making an informed decision leading up to the New South Wales state election, and pre-poll opens on Monday. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the host of Turning Point Australia, Joel Jammal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are very happy today to be joined by the one and only Joel Jammal from Turning Point Australia. Joel, welcome to MCJ Report. Now, your pre-poll for New South Wales kicks off on Monday. And my understanding is that you've been very busy in the background, creating and putting forward many resources that can be of the utmost of use to people in New South Wales seeking to make a good decision come polling day. Could you please talk to us a little bit about what you've been up to and what resources you have made available to the New South Wales voting public?
Yeah, absolutely. So unlike Victoria, unlike the federal election, we only have 1 week of early voting. It actually starts this Saturday, and then Sunday is a day off, and then it keeps going from Monday onwards. And we're rolling out the same projects we did in Victoria with a few alterations. This election, it's a very unique one, and we'll talk about it a bit later, but the freedom parties are working together, which is refreshing. And they haven't actually run in the same seats. So there's about 60 or so seats out of 93 where there's freedom candidates running. And they haven't actually run in the same seats at all, which has been really good. There's only about 3 where there's overlap. And so that's been happening in the background. Behind that, Turning Point and myself, we've been giving them the tools that they need to succeed. So with voters, as usual, we've got our how to vote cards, which defund the majors, empower conviction candidates, and get more people elected in the upper house. The second project is we've got a volunteer funnel, so we can channel our audience into volunteers for the candidates around the state. Instead of going to the party, like in Victoria, we're sending it directly to the candidate's personal email so they get it straight away. The other project we're doing, which is really cool, is we're rolling out the transparency reports, just like in Victoria. They're coming out next week, and they will give people an insight into how their member of parliament voted, what exactly they've been saying in the public eye, and maybe some of the red flags of things that they've said. The fourth project is a preference flow chart. In New South Wales, thankfully, we don't have the group voting ticket. The voter is 100% in control of their vote. They can vote above the line as many times as they want. They control where that preference flows. But political parties do still hand out how to vote cards. And so we've got a card which shows all of the conviction parties versus the left-wing parties and how their how to vote cards work. Are the freedom parties working together? Are the left-wing parties working together? That all comes out. And so that's coming out in the next day or so. And the fifth project is scrutineer training to get people upskilled and to help train candidates. And the sixth project is, I've totally forgotten now. I've forgotten what the sixth project is, but I'm sure it'll come out as we're talking.
That's all right, Joel. There's so much on your plate. I'm sure that it will come back to you. Now, these sound like great services that you've made available there to the public. And it is indeed so important for voters to be properly informed before casting their vote, because I think if we look at the past few years, we see the result of what potentially could have been avoided, maybe if in Australia we were paying a bit more attention to public affairs and civics. Now, let me just ask you a couple of questions here. I think the transparency report, very, very interesting, and also your recommendations for the how to vote card. So I'm going to ask you two questions in one here. Question number one is, how does the public access these resources? And could you please talk to us a little bit about the process involved in crafting your transparency reports, and also a little bit of the process in relation to the how to vote cards? A few questions in one. I can jog your memory on that if you need me to.
No, awesome. So I just remember that sixth project. It's the policy matrix and it's the educational graphics that shows people where parties land on policy. Now,
Awesome.
That first question you asked about where we actually get our understanding of, I'm going to go with the last question. How do the how to vote cards derived? Well, there's three aspects to a how to vote card, both for the lower house and the upper house. The first aspect is the party. What policies are they running on? And that is certainly shown.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that there's actually a bit of a technical issue there with the interview with Joel. I may have to actually upload it. It appears that the audio and visual were very, very badly, very much out of sync. So I'm just going to ask for your comments there in the chat, because I think that I'll actually have to re-upload that, because that's obviously not what we want. And my very sincere apologies. I can tell you that certainly was not intentional. I'm just going to wait for some comments to come through, because I was looking at it from my end. I was actually watching it on my phone, and I said, what in the world is going on? Joel is speaking, but it's actually Morgan's voice. So if you could just go and put some comments there, then I think that I'm going to have to go and find out what the issue is and re-upload that interview. So I'm just going to wait for some comments to come through so that I can... Okay, so supposedly Joel had my voice. So yeah, Joel, if you're watching, my apologies about that. And but rest assured, I'm going to re-upload that. Yeah, it was overlapping, which was really strange. I don't know why that happened, but anyway, I'm gonna upload that, guys. So that was the final segment for the show. So now we've actually got some time on our hands. So why don't you go ahead and post questions in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat from both Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. So just go and post your questions, and we're going to just go back and forth a bit. So there's Maddie there. There's Ned Kelly's ghost. Okay, that's an interesting name. Marlene says out of sync, yeah, and Sharon says Joel had my voice. Nikki said, Morgan, will you have anyone running for Freedom Party in New South Wales? Well, we're not registered in New South Wales, so the best thing you can really do is go to the Turning Point Australia website and go and check out all the resources, all right, because there's going to be lots there that you can do. Judy says Gays Against Groomers. Yeah, I heard about this organization. So in America, there's an organization called Gays Against Groomers, and they're basically gay people who are speaking up and speaking out against the grooming of kids and things like that. And I think they're doing a really great job. So I'd actually like to reach out to them and get one of their representatives on the show, because I think that's exactly what we need. Just having a read down here. Judy says it was a bit out of sync. Yeah, it looked like it was massively out of sync. So let's see. There's Willow there. Awa says, thank you for dedicating so much time on this. No, it's definitely fine. Look, we've got to call it out. We've got to put these things into explicit terms, because a problem that is not identified and articulated will never ever be solved, okay? The first step to solving a problem is identify the problem, acknowledge that it exists, talk about why it's a problem, talk about the effect that it's having, where it could lead, okay? And that's the only way that we can come forward with solutions. But we must first identify the problem. Yeah, that definitely was a bit of a malfunction there. So you'll have to excuse me, guys. I'm pretty much just a one-man band here, MCJ Report. When I run the show, I don't have a tech person or a producer. It's just me operating everything. So Of course, if you'd like to help MCJ Report get to the next level, then you can become a member. That's right. So you can become a member for $5 a month. Just head on over to www.mcjreport.com, and that way I can improve the show so that these technical mishaps do not happen, and I can, of course, dedicate more time and effort, expand the team. MCJ Report has one staff member at the moment helping with the administrative side of things. Okay, so MCJ Report striving to create jobs, and of course a lot of time, effort, dedication, research, graphic design. I do all that myself, goes into the show. And for the show to secure longevity, it absolutely needs support. Nothing in this world can survive without funding, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, the content will always be free and available to anyone who needs it, right? Anyone who wants it. There's no obligation. But if you can, become a member, $5 a month. There's perks, there's events, there's members only emails, things like that. And of course, you will be securing MCJ Report so that MCJ Report can stay forever. So once again, if you want to support the show in order to improve everything, mcjreport.com, click on membership, join the team. Alrighty. Willow says, what's the latest on Dan's corruption inquiries? Well, I mean, the latest is Daniel Andrews denies everything. What we know about the Premier of Victoria is that he will throw anyone under the bus, even people in his own cabinet, for the objective of saving his own skin. Unfortunately, it appears that Dan Andrews has the Victorian Parliament and broader government wrapped around his little finger, and he basically has a blank checkbook to do whatever he wants. That's right. IBAC hearings behind closed doors, no problem for the Premier Daniel Andrews. So just keep your eyes on him. I'll keep my eyes on him, and we'll make sure that in the end he does not get away with doing the things of which he has done for far too long. Alrighty. Let's see. You want to know what they're talking about in Parliament on a daily basis? Okay, well, you can go to the Vic Parliament website. You're asking, does Monica's donations go to me? No, absolutely not. Okay, so Reignite Democracy, I think that's what you're referring to. A completely separate entity to MCJ Report, 100% separated entity. So no. If you're supporting Reignite Democracy, that does not in any way, shape, or form support MCJ Report or the work that your hopefully favorite Freedom Guy Morgan does. I'm just reading through the comments here. John says, what are your thoughts on the dangers of losing the last Liberal state on the mainland? Yeah, it's concerning. I mean, you know, you look around the world, you look around the country, and Labor is taking over just absolutely everywhere, right? And it's very, very concerning. I think Tasmania is Liberal. Yeah, Tasmania is Liberal. So if New South Wales goes to Labor, then Tasmania will be the last remaining Liberal state. And anyone who knows me knows I've been very critical of the Liberal Party. But what I'm more critical of is a one-party system, especially the Labor Party, which we know have moved further and further to the left. Big government spending, surveillance, all that bad stuff. And should the Liberal Party disappear, there will effectively be no opposition. Not that the Liberal Party, especially here in Victoria, has done a good job providing opposition. There's some good people in the Liberal Party in Victoria, in Parliament, some very, very good people. I'll always give individuals the props that they deserve. But overall, I mean, yeah, they're dwindling, and it's potentially going to be a massive problem because a one-party system can do whatever they want, pass whatever laws they want, no matter how obscure the legislation may be. And we, the Australian public, will be sitting ducks, just waiting to be subjected to whatever the powers to be want to subject us to. And that is not what democracy is supposed to be. And that will not guarantee our freedom. Freedom will be gone forever. That's right. Okay, let's see. Just having a look here. Yeah, well, listen, I think that in the end, bad guys fall. So just have faith that good prevails over evil, okay? Those who operate in the shadows will be exposed at one point or another. And keep the faith. Keep faith in your fellow Australians. There's more of us out there than what you may think, people who love our country, who are dedicated to freedom. And it might be a rocky road for a few years, but the last thing you ever want to do is give up. Because guess what? Winners never quit and quitters never win. Klaus Schwab, Labour Party, yeah, CCP, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's been Labour and Liberal that have really empowered the Chinese Communist Party in their encroachment into Australia, from the privatisation of our assets, hanging back idle whilst China was able to expand their soft power throughout the Indo-Pacific. And now, of course, we see Australia scrambling, trying to broaden security pacts with the United States and the UK. Where is this all heading? Time will tell. Josh says, do I reckon I'll come to Bendigo? Yeah, 100%. I'm not sure when, but I've got good friends in Bendigo. I love Bendigo. And give me a reason to come. What would the reason be? I mean, I haven't seen my friends for a while. There's always that. I like to multitask. You know what I mean, Josh? So I'm the type of guy where, yes, I'd like to socialize and do all those sorts of things, but I want to kill another bird at the same time. I like to kill two birds with one stone. So if I can go to a place with the objective of seeing my friends, but then also engage in some sort of activity that will propel our cause forward, then that to me is a good day out. Does that make sense? I'm often not happy if I can only achieve one objective in a certain trip. There's Anne there. How you going? Susan says there were a lot of people wanting to get rid of Dan Andrews in the last election, but they voted him back in. Yeah. So you got to understand that in the electorate of Mulgrave, Dan has really conditioned so many people to vote for him over the years. There's lots of ethnic minority groups. So Dan will go in, he'll fund cultural centres, he'll fund schools, he'll fund religious organisations. It's basically democracy for sale. And what a lot of these ethnic and religious communities perhaps fail to understand, especially given the fact that they are mostly conservatives, they're social conservatives, is the woke agendas that have become rife in our schools under the Daniel Andrews Labor government. Okay, the grooming of children. We see in the Pride Centre here in Melbourne, the drag queen story time for kids. We see local councils. In fact, the Mornington Shire Council is promoting some sort of drag queen day where children from 10 years old get free entry. They're encouraging children to go there. These people are groomers. They're offenders. They're criminals. They're pedophiles. They're seeking to expose children to explicit adult content. All right, that is a crime by any standard. But supposedly in Australia, we've gone so far backwards that exploiting the most vulnerable is becoming trendy. It's absolutely disgusting and it makes me sick. And nobody should be scared to talk out about this, all right? You should never bite your tongue. If you're in a group of friends or you're with a group of people and they're talking about, oh yes, so next weekend we're taking our kids to drag queen story time, etc. You know what? You call that person out. You say, how do you think it's acceptable as a parent to be grooming your child? Yeah, you might lose some friends, but do you really want these people as your friends? Be brave, stand up, especially when it comes to protecting the innocent. There's Josh there saying if I want to come down, show up at a protest or something like that. Yeah, I'd love to. I really would love to come back. Unfortunately, I'm so chockers with my schedule and everything like that. So MCJ Report is not the only thing I do. So I work during the week. That's right. I do regular work like a lot of other people. Ideally, I'd love to do this full time, of course. I'm just going to keep building the show. And should MCJ Report, plus my advocacy work, plus my work with Freedom Party turn into a full-time gig, then I will be much more able to be a free agent, much more able to be anywhere at any time, tackling causes. And that's really what I want to do with my life. You see, you don't need to be in Parliament to be someone that affects change. And sometimes you can actually be a lot more effective outside of Parliament because you're more free to be anywhere at any one time. I really enjoyed my trip to Singleton, New South Wales a few weeks back, to the Caledonian. Absolutely loved it. I was so humbled. There were people there that actually traveled multiple hours, more than 4 hours, to come and hear me speak. And very, very humbling, very, very nice. And of course, this is what I want to do. I just want to use my mind, body, and soul and all my energy to promote freedom for Australia and to call out the crooked politicians who have worked within the walls of our Parliament for too long. All right, we need to expose them every single day. And I want people to join me. Join me in calling out government corruption. That's right. Don't be scared. Don't be scared of Big Brother. All right, okay? They can put out all their surveillance cameras. They can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on data collection services. And they already know just about everything about everyone. And so they've got the information already. So what do you have left to lose? Join me, MCJ Report. Join me, Freedom Party of Victoria. And together we just take these people head on. And in the end, what will be will be. Would you rather live a safe life, never take any risks, and die a death without having any exciting stories? Or would you rather be a Viking, be a wrecking ball, just pull the pin from the grenade, throw the grenade, take on enemies, call out injustice, stand up, do something, even if it's in a small capacity, and that way, when the final bell goes in our lives, right, and that bell will ring for every single one of us, at least you can say, you know what, I stood up when it mattered, I did something, I took measures to protect our kids, I took measures to advance Australia into a country in which would be better than the manner of which I found it. And to me, that's what life is all about. Life is all about that. And you know what? Along the way, you have fun. You never forget to have fun. That is a super important part of it. There's Nikki there. There's Jess saying somebody sold his soul to Satan. I dare say that you're speaking about a very large number of our parliamentarians. All right, just reading through the comments. If you've got any questions, feel free to put it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. Having some issues with social media, of course, you know, numbers have gone down a lot. When I go live, especially on Facebook, there's very few people watching. And I mean, my account has attracted 102,000 followers. I'll go live on Facebook and there'll be like 15 people watching. Yet some posts will, you know, go into the tens of thousands of views when I upload videos individually. So, you know, it's not, I don't think it's a very fair, equitable exchange. And we know that the algorithms will work against people who hold certain political opinions, etc. Judy says Canada outlawed via restrictions. Right. And there's Sharon there. Sharon, how you doing? Sharon is our resident security guard, kicking out the people who seek to cause problems. There's no reminders, yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube, right, click the reminder bell, and so that way you'll be reminded when I go live. So YouTube is actually seems to be pretty good. It hasn't kicked me off for a while. So it's youtube.com/Morgan C. Jonas. And the MCJ Report Facebook page with 5,000 followers, that always has like 2 people watching. So if you're watching on the MCJ Report page, it's kind of like an exclusive screening of MCJ Report. You don't really have to compete. You don't have to shove anyone to get to the front row or anything like that. You just take a pick out of all the empty chairs and away you go. All right, so if anyone has any more questions, let me know. I am going to find out what the problem was with Joel's interview. I'm going to upload that. That will go live on my Facebook page at tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. It will be on my Facebook page and getting out there to the general public. Willow says, let's be Vikings. Be a Viking. That's right. You know, be unapologetic. Ask yourself the question, do you love your country? Do you love your neighbors? Are you willing to sacrifice for your country? and go out and do it. And if you're in New South Wales, go and volunteer. Pre-poll starts on Monday. Dedicate 1 week to helping a candidate that you think will do a good job. What is 1 week out of 52 weeks in a year? It's nothing. Get out there, put your boots on the ground, and do something to make our country a better place. There's Vickett there. You're saying you're a veteran. First of all, thank you for your service. I absolutely have so much respect for anybody who has risked their safety in order to preserve the safety of their fellow Australians. So thank you very much. Much respect. And you said they're more concerned about trans, yet veterans are dying every week. It is a disgrace. It makes me so ashamed of our government. You know, we've still got guys from Vietnam living on the streets. We still have a veteran homelessness crisis. You'll never see the Premier talking about that. He'll put $870 million into mental health. God knows who the service providers or the consultants are, in order to tackle a mental health crisis that was ultimately created by the government. And our veterans have been left behind. There's even been instances where our veterans, after their service, and of course, a lot of returned servicemen and women are left very traumatized from war. There's been instances where returned soldiers have been admitted to, say, a hospital or potentially a psych ward for an evaluation, and upon their exit, discharged straight into homelessness. And this stuff is going on every single day. It makes you absolutely sick. And, you know, the government has tens of millions of dollars to throw around at these Pride Street festivals and stuff like that. Why is that funded by taxpayers anyway? Why can't there be some sort of, private organization that funds that sort of thing? Why does the taxpayer have to foot the bill? Australia Day getting cancelled, no more Australia Day. Clearly, we have a very anti-Australian government, I would say, ladies and gentlemen. No worries, Vickett. Thank you very much. We had multiple candidates who were ex-servicemen and veterans. Our candidate for Melbourne, he was a Vietnam veteran. We had former Navy over in Eastern Region, my mate Tony, who these days runs a business called FATV Jerky. And we, of course, had our illustrious deputy leader, Aidan McClendon, former serviceman himself in the Australian Army, who, no surprise, just rolled out the grenades and marched straight on into Mulgrave to take on the big bad bully Daniel Andrews. And there's probably more, but I'm just forgetting. So Willow said that you recorded 2 songs about the vax and you sent them to my email. Thank you. Sometimes I receive a lot of emails and I may not have seen it, but I'll go back and I'll take a bit of a look. So thank you very much for doing that. There's Regan. Daniel Andrews statue. That just makes you sick, doesn't it? Just the prospect of a Daniel Andrews statue. Now, I'm not a fan of tearing down statues. I never have been. But for Daniel Andrews, I might make an exception to that rule. I don't want a statue of that man in my city. Who here agrees? Just says that you like the backdrop. All right, here's a challenge. Who here knows where the backdrop is? Can you identify the backdrop specifically? 10 points to anyone who can identify it, all right? So now the backdrop, even the word identify has become weird in this day and age, but who here knows where it is? But be specific about it. Vickett says you were there on election day helping out the freedom parties. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support. And yeah, I really do. Marianne says our government is very anti-Australia. They are. Our country is beautiful. Our land is beautiful. And we as Australians, we're good people. We are a diverse bunch. And I hate the fact that the word diverse has taken on a whole new meaning as well. There's so many words that have been hijacked. But you look at our country, we're unique. We used to have a great manufacturing industry. We know how to have a laugh. We're tough as nails, apart from the soy latte sipping generation, but don't worry about them. And our country is worth fighting for. Our country is so worth fighting for, and Australians who love this country need to get engaged in the political process, whether it's running for office, volunteering. It is the only way that we can get things back on track. Now, some people are out there saying, what about a rebellion? What about a civil war? Well, I don't think that's going to happen. We don't have a climate like Myanmar that has an established militia. I don't think it's likely that the ADF will fragment and, turn on the government or anything like that. You need to assume that those things won't happen. Therefore, the only course we really have, as unfair and at times, dare I say, rigged as it is our democratic system. Lorraine said that you enjoyed working pre-poll and poll, but some of the Labor volunteers and MPs were bullies. Yeah, some of them were just absolutely disgusting. Ferals. 10 points like social credit. That's right. All right, so Melbourne CBD. It is Melbourne CBD, but it's not South Bank. That's pretty close though. Josh says that you're a Gen Z. What is Gen Z? I don't even know what age bracket that is. You see, that's how out of the loop I am with these sort of terms. But you're a Gen X who doesn't bow down to snowflakes or woke puppies. That's awesome. And he says, don't give me that soy latte. Good, Josh. Reject the soy latte, all right? I have some major concerns about people who consume too much soy. I'm not convinced that it is a good thing to do whatsoever. Jeff says, do I believe that the Antichrist is coming? Well, what I believe is that, unfortunately, we have a very large degree of people in power who care very little for the humanity of the average man and woman. They care for their career. They care for advancing their status in politics, and they will do so at the expense of abusing people's human rights. And that is the toxic culture that has developed over a long time in Australian politics. And are these people evil? I'm not sure. That's maybe a little bit more of a philosophical discussion. Are they people who are unfit for office? Absolutely. Absolutely. They're either sinister or ignorant. Either way, they're unfit. They need to go. And it is only us. It is only we, the people, that can make that happen. So remember that. 8 p.m. Thursday nights. Thank you, Simone. That's right. 8 p.m. Thursday nights. Gen Z is now 16 to 24. So you're Gen Z. That's good. That's good because we need the younger generation. We need the younger generation. Now, I love my MCJ Report audience very much dearly. I love you all. I support you all, and I'm so appreciative that you watch the show. But what we need is we need to get more younger people involved. I do look at the analytics, and I know the average age of people who watch MCJ Report, and you are the people who are fighting the hardest, doing the most, after already working for decades and giving your blood, sweat, and tears to this country. So I love you for it. But we need more young people to get involved in this cause, because unfortunately they're all going to the socialist left, and that is going to spell disaster for us down the track. So if you're in your 20s, get involved. Get involved. Take a stand. Do something brave. Put down, what you're doing, and fight for Australia, because our country is beautiful. Nikki says I look 24. Well, let's not go crazy. You're only 14 years off the mark. Yeah, I had to think about that. That's right. Your host from MCJ Report, Morgan. I am 38. That's right. 38 years old, ladies and gentlemen. And I can tell you I got a lot of fight in me. A lot of fight. Ready to go. Whatever happens, just roll me out. And become an MCJ member, $5 a month if you can afford it. So therefore, I can go and take the bullets so that you don't have to. How about that? That's a good deal. MCJreport.com. Become a member, And when there's problems, you just send me out and I go on attack. And I'm happy to take the criticism and to take the brunt, because that's just a decision I've made. I'm already on public record, government, Victoria Police, Federal Police, they already know everything about me, so I may as well just go all the way. That's right. How do we stop it, says Lorraine. Mobilize, talk to your friends and family, don't worry, there's going to be more. Millennials, they'll wake the young ones up. Daniel says your parents worked in jobs no one wanted to do, paid taxes 42 years, and aren't entitled to a pension. That's disgusting. I'm just having a look here. All right, guys. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. All right, I'd like to thank everyone for tonight. My apologies again for the instance with the interview, but tune back in. All right, tune in. So 7:30 a.m. tomorrow, I will upload the interview with Joel, and please check back on my page and share it everywhere. And again, my apologies for that happening, a technical issue. And in the meantime, guys, lots of love. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next episode of MCJ Report. All right, lady.
Important internal
MPs.
team sheets likely. Probably a label.
And Brentford's job.
They wonder important and it's all
At a grassroots
rolling out his party's land public. They've been saying in the channel rolling.
affairs and civics. Now, let me just ask you a couple of questions here. I think the transparency report, very, very interesting. And also, you reckon people,
And they wonder why is it that Joel's put a conviction candidate and then gone Labor? And it's like, well,